Hello, and welcome to Dementia Masters. This is Rebecca, occupational therapist, and I am here to help you master dementia. Today, we are going to talk about 3 tips on what not to do with your loved one with dementia. These tips will help reduce behaviors, will help make your life easier, will help reduce your stress, and will help your loved one's life a little bit easier. So, tip number 1 is not to argue with your loved one. There is no point of arguing with your loved one. The same argument might happen tomorrow, and what your loved one believes is what's going to be what they believe. So it's important for us to try not to convince your loved one that what they're saying is wrong, because right now what they believe is right, is what they think is right in their brain. The brain of someone with dementia is different than the brain of someone that it does not have dementia. So it's important for us to go with the flow. And for example, things like creating stories. There's a lot of stories that come out of a loved one with dementia, and sometimes they're real and sometimes they're not. So I am a occupational therapist and working in a nursing home. When I meet someone and I talk to them and I interview them and I do an evaluation, they can tell me any story. I don't know if it's real or not. They can tell me that they had a dog that got ran over and his name was Fluffy, and they're not sure when it happened. I'm not going to argue with them because I don't know if they have a dog named Fluffy. But if I was my father's daughter and he said, my dog got ran over and it was heartbreaking or whatnot, and I said, Dad, we never even had a dog. What are you talking about? Like, that's not true. You never had a dog and all that type of stuff. Why have that argument? Why go into that? Maybe asking, you can redirect, you can acknowledge what they said. Oh, wow. When did your dog get ran over? What was his name? What did he look like? I had a dog too, and he was brown. What's your favorite dog brand or, type? What color is your favorite? Do you like them when they're fluffy? Do you like them when they're small? So you can redirect the question or the answers and the conversation for that person. And maybe you can just let them go with the flow again and let them talk about this situation. Maybe, and this is in a different subject, and if you join my Decoding Dementia program, we'll talk more in depth about this, but maybe it's something that they saw on TV. A lot of people with dementia create the stories that they've seen on TV because that's their reality. So, side note, it's important to make sure you understand what your loved one's watching, because they can create it in their heads and think it's a reality because it's happening in reality for them right now. But anyways, we want to acknowledge what they're saying. We want to be present for what they're talking about. We don't want to dismiss them. None of us want to be dismissed when we're trying to say something. And we want to redirect them if it's going into a story that's not helpful, or if it's going into the same story that we heard 10 minutes ago. So maybe getting up and walking around, doing an activity, an exercise, all that type of stuff is important, and just not arguing with them, because what's the point again? And why telling them another point that goes with this is not saying, don't you remember? So if you say, don't you remember, Dad? We never had a dog. That doesn't help him because he doesn't remember. We don't want to test our loved one and say, maybe he remembers today or maybe he remembers tomorrow. We don't need to ask that. We just want to go with their reality and have it be a good experience for them, because the more increased anxiety, the increased suspicion that they have, all of that creates behaviors throughout the day. They might be stewing on it for quite a while and look at you and think, that's the person that argues with me, and that's the person that doesn't believe what I'm saying. So now I'm going to have that kind of sturdiness or that I don't want to say hatred, but that feeling of I'm not going to participate with them. So the difference between me being a caregiver in a nursing home, I just go with the flow because I don't know their real true answers unless I talk to a family member or something like that. So I don't know if the person's been in France. I don't know anything. So I just go with the flow. But when I'm a caregiver for my father, I'm more personalized. And I'm like, no, Dad, we didn't have a dog. What are you talking about? That doesn't help him. So that's tip number one. No need to argue. Just let it go because it's going to give us stress and it's going to happen again. So why do it over and over again? Why not make it a peaceful conversation and a happy conversation? And that's what we just need. So that's tip number one. Tip number two goes along with tip number one is to not work on correcting your loved one. It's important to not correct your loved one because, again, it's going to cause them stress. They're not going to believe you, and they're going to have this feeling towards you that you are not someone to trust. So, for example, my mother had Alzheimer's, my grandmother, excuse me, had Alzheimer's when I was young in my 20s. And this was before I was going to school. I was going to school for social work and my uncle was helping taking care of her, and we would go visit her. I went and visited. Kind of, I was in college, so I would visit maybe once a month or a little bit longer. But as I would arrive and talk to her, she would call me Mary Elizabeth, and Mary Elizabeth is my mother's name, and my mother had passed away when I was 10. So now at this point, I am in my 20s, so I did look like my mother, or do look like my mother, long brown hair, brown eyes. And so she would call me Mary Elizabeth. On my end, I didn't care because I was still there to visit. I was there to have a conversation, and I was there to talk to her. It didn't matter what she called me. But my uncle was a very stern type person, lawyer, on more of the cuff of having to have reality. And he would always correct her. And for this, he would say, "That's Rebecca. That's Mary Elizabeth's daughter. Mary Elizabeth died." And this was not helpful for me. It made me feel uncomfortable, but it also wasn't helpful for my grandmother because then sometimes she would just get in an argument and say this isn't true and be heard from what he had said. And at times she would go into what happened to your mother? What happened? Why don't I remember this? This is my daughter. How can I lose this love of my daughter that has passed away and I don't remember? So giving her all of that anxiety and bringing all of that depression up and those new thoughts up is not helpful. It's not helpful for the person that's sitting there, and it's not helpful for the person with Alzheimer's. And quite frankly, she's going to call me Mary Elizabeth probably in about 20 minutes. So it's not going to change anything. Maybe she stumbled her words. Maybe there's a time where she does remember that her daughter has passed away. But that's not the important part. The important part is that I was visiting. And so just having that conversation, and she was joyful to have tea and cookies with me, and it didn't want to have this sad news on her. So it's important to, just because think you're trying to provide the reality check for your loved one, it doesn't help. They are not in their own our reality. They're in their own reality, and that's what's important to remember. So just remember not to have to be the fact checker and tell them that everything, the reality of everything. Let them stay in their own reality. Let them stay happy. Tip number 3, don't try to reason with your loved one. Again, it kind of goes with the arguing back and staying in their reality. If they have a reason or a belief that is going on, it's a true belief. It's their feeling, their body is physically reacting to something. So there's a couple instances that I have, and I will give you some examples. Example of reasoning is my father used to call me at work and say, I haven't eaten. Nobody's fed me. I haven't eaten in days. And there are times where I gave him food before I left, and this is within an hour of me being, this was um, during a difficult time between me trying to figure out how to be a caregiver and work full time. But he would call and say that he hadn't eaten. And I used to try to reason with him. Yes, you did. If you look in the trash, maybe there's egg cartons there. Look at the dishes. I haven't even done them yet. That type of stuff. That's just not happening. He was hungry and he wanted something done now. And unfortunately, for people with dementia, they want the thing done now. And sticking with that is a very difficult part, too. But trying to reason, you want to stay and create, kind of be creative about the words you use and just stay within their reality and then try to redirect them. And what I would say eventually was, okay, I'll be back in an hour. I can bring some lunch. I may not have been back in an hour, but that helped resolve his problem. And I think he was just probably calling because he was worried. He was missing me. He didn't have control over what was going on. And you don't know what's going on inside the brain of a person with dementia at each moment. So another couple examples is that I lived with a woman that had dementia and caring for her while I was going to school for OT. And I wasn't completely used to, this was when I was younger, someone with dementia, but I was helping do overnights and working with her daughter. So I came home from school and the cops were there. She had called the cops thinking that someone had stolen all of her pieces to her vacuum. And at the time, I was like, I didn't steal this stuff. Nobody's been in the house. Nobody has a key. And I'm trying to tell the cops in front of her that this isn't true. This isn't happening. And she's just got dementia and she's, has lost her memory. And the cops kind of, went about their way, but she was still very adamant that this has happened. And we went to where the vacuum was and the pieces were missing. And what we did is we walked around, and what I should have done from the very beginning is not say stuff in front of her, in front of the cops, to the cops. I should have taken them aside and said this and said, exactly what I said to her. Let's walk around and see if we can find, maybe this person put them away for you because they were cleaning the house. Maybe your daughter came in, she was cleaning the house and she put them in the wrong spot. So let's look around. Eventually, we found them in a different spot. The woman had put them in a different closet. So these are things that are important to not try to reason and give them your reality, because again, they're in their own reality. Another example is that a lot of times our loved ones feel like someone has stolen something from them. My father would tell me that my brother has stolen his wallet. And I know my brother didn't steal his wallet. My brother didn't need to steal his wallet. There's times that I put the wallet in a drawer because it was just floating everywhere. But what had happened is that, especially as we get older, our whole entire lives revolve around our financial system. So we carry our purses and we carry our wallets, and it's been something that's ingrained in us since we were little. So missing that piece that's right there, reaching in his back pocket and realizing that it's not there and then he can't find it, becomes an issue. So we don't say, no, Dad, Abe didn't steal your wallet. Don't you remember that you put it somewhere else and you accused him last time of this and we found it? That's not going to help him. He is stuck on the fact that my brother has stolen his wallet. So instead, we say, let's go look for it. Let's go see if he put it somewhere, and let's go see where we can go find it. This, again, puts in some good exercise of walking around, and exercise is very, very important. Walking around, getting something, and you can, Even if you know where it is, take a little bit longer. Walk somewhere, go back and forth, add that extra therapy in there. For me, as an occupational therapist, I'm always thinking of those things. But bring him to his wallet or find it for him. And eventually, as you learn your loved one's new role with dementia, that they do hide things that are important to them, because we've all done it. Hide some money somewhere, stash it in a book. Especially people that are older, they are used to keeping their cash and putting it somewhere. But making them feel comfortable with what's going on, but not trying to reason and to tell them that their reality that they're thinking is wrong, but my reality is right. Because again, it's going to create a behavior, and it's just going to create a longer day. And what we want is a nice, easy, happy day. So let's recap. We don't want to argue, we don't want to correct, and we don't want to try to reason with our loved one. We also don't want to say, don't you remember? So those are 4 important things of not to do with your loved one, because it's going to create a anxiety or a rift between your relationship. Your person with dementia may not even remember your name, but they remember the emotions that they've had with you. And if those emotions are, someone's always correcting me, they don't believe what I'm saying, there's no point of me saying anything. So we have to get into and listen full heartedly into what they're trying to say, because there is a story behind there. There is a reason why they're talking. Maybe they just want to have a conversation with somebody. So we have to remember that we have to remember that these people, that our loved ones, have dementia, and it's a disease that makes them forget things. So we don't need to ask them if they've remembered these things, and we don't have to correct them. So hopefully this makes your dementia experience a little bit easier. And I know it takes time, because we are all used to arguing back, correcting whoever said something wrong. And this is what we are ingrained to do. This is what we do. So just remember, the less you do it, the easier it is to get through the day. And I'll have some more tips and tricks to dementia caring. And if you would like to join my dementia program, that would be great. If you look at the link below, there's a link to dementiamasters.com, and then you can join my Decoding Dementia program, where we get into the personalized things. Because like I said, each person is different, each situation is different, each personality is different. So one thing might work for one person and another thing might not work for another. So we have to evaluate and really become the mind readers of our loved ones, each person, to figure out what's going on with them and why they might be refusing or why something's going on. So I hope this is helpful, and I hope you guys have a great day and keep on doing all the good work you're doing, because caregiving is one of the hardest things to do. And loving everybody is just the most important thing to do. Talk to you guys later.